Let's go through the second logic game. Just as a reminder, we're going through the June 2007 LSAT because that's a test that's available for free on the LSAT website. So what you can do is you can print out the PDF and follow along with the videos here. So the first thing that we want to do for this logic game is to read the introductory paragraph to see what sort of game it is that we're dealing with, come up with a basic structure to represent the game, and then write down anything from this original paragraph that seems to be important. So the introductory paragraph for this game goes as follows. Exactly 3 films, Greed, Harvest, and Limelight, are shown during a film club's festival held on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Each film is shown at least once during the festival, but never more than once on a given day. On each day, at least one film is shown. Films are shown one at a time. The following conditions apply. So we actually have a decent amount of useful information in that paragraph, and we want to make sure that we capture it in the setup to our game. So the first thing that I notice is that we have 3 days and we have 3 films. So we want to at least keep track of the films. We can say that we have, for films, we have G, H, and L. And for days, we have Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. What we notice here is the game tells us that on each day at least one film is shown. So we can put at least one spot for films on each day. Notice that it doesn't tell us whether there are 1 film shown, 2 films shown, 3 films shown. We don't know that yet. But we can say we're at least reserving 1 spot on each day, and there might be other spots assigned down here. Now, one thing that's important to remember is you want to make sure that you have down all the relevant information from the introductory paragraph before you move on, because there are small things that may turn out to be important. So for example here, each film is shown at least once during the festival. Okay. Each film at least once. It seems obvious, but when we're under time pressure and stress and whatnot, that might be something that's easier to forget than we realize now. It says never more than once on a given day. Films don't repeat more than once per day. You can write this down in any way that makes sense to you. I'm just writing things down how they seem initially to make sense to me. It's not entirely worth wasting time thinking about, well, what's the absolute best or most efficient way to write this down? Just write something down that'll keep your mind where it needs to be. I think that that covers everything in this introductory paragraph. We can read through it again. We say each film is shown at least once, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, never more than once on a given day. On each day, at least 1 film is shown. Films are shown one at a time. Seems like we've pretty much captured everything relevant here. Note that I didn't specifically write down the films are shown one at a time. We will just have to remember that, but that seems obvious enough that we should be able to handle that. The next thing that we can do with this game is to look at the specific rules. As a starting point, we just want to write them down so we have a complete checklist of things to be thinking about. And then after we're done doing that, we want to think about what deductions we can make from the rules. So the first rule states, on Thursday, Harvest is shown, and no film is shown after it on that day. Okay, well we can just write that down. H on Thursday, and none after. We can then go to the second rule. It says on Friday, either Greed or Limelight, but not both, is shown. And no film is shown after it on that day. So here we have what's called in logical terms an exclusive or. That typically an or, A or B, as long as at least one of them is true, the whole thing is true. Here when we say one or the other but not both, we're talking about this exclusive or, and we can have exactly one of them, but not both. In words, that's pretty clear. In logical shorthand, we can write that we either have G, we say XOR L on Friday and none after. Just a helpful way of writing that. It's important to remember, because sometimes it is a little bit confusing for people, that unless you see this but not both, the or statements are not exclusive ors, they're just regular ors. The third rule states, on Saturday, either greed or harvest, but not both, is shown, and no other film is shown after it on that day. So we can say here, G exclusive or H on Saturday with none after. And that concludes the shorthand of rules. The next question is, what deductions can we make, and what setup and what structure can we put on this that's going to be hopefully a little bit more helpful than just having this list of rules? This game can be considered an assignment game, because when it comes down to it, what we're really doing is we're assigning films to days. So in that sense, we can set up a little grid here to mark down our yeses and our nos for what we know about the assignment of films to days. So we can go through the rules and say, for each rule, what can we fill in this thing here? Notice each film is shown at least once. Well, that means that we're going to have at least one yes in each row of our diagram. So I can just write down greater than or equal to 1 for each row, just as a reminder, just so it's harder to forget than it would be otherwise. Films don't repeat more than once per day. Well, that's pretty much captured here, because there's no way to represent multiple yeses for a given day, so I think we're okay with that. We have H on Thursday. Okay. We said before that we want to represent yeses as just filled in boxes. So we can just put a yes like so for Thursday. None after. Well, not really sure how to represent that here. So we'll just leave it B for now, and remember that we can use this setup as well as the explicit list of rules here. Here we say we have exactly one of G and L on Friday. Well, that's kind of hard to represent on our diagram because we don't know which one it is. We just know that it's exactly one of them. But what we notice here is, because we can have exactly one of them but not both, what we can do is say at most 2 films are going to be shown on Friday. We can do a similar thing with this third rule here, to say exactly one of G and H is shown on Saturday. This means that if we can't have both G and H, that the maximum number of films to be shown on Saturday is also 2. And in each of these cases, we can either have G or L by themselves, or we can have, in this case, G or L along with H. Here, we can have either G or H by themselves, or we can have exactly one of G and H along with L. So it's just helpful to think about, in somewhat concrete terms, what it is we could be looking at. But so far, it seems like this is really about the best that we can do. Now, we can be worried here that we haven't made enough deductions, but some games just don't have that many deductions to be made up front. And believe me, if you've missed a deduction, you'll realize it quickly enough, because you won't be able to answer one of the questions when you get to it. So let's take this as given for now. Say, let's think about this. This seems to be all we can do, and let's go to the questions.